Seattle sports fans, it's finally time. We are finally recording this podcast, and we're super excited to give you this episode and just cannot wait for the future of this show. Before we get into the meat of the pod, though, just want to introduce ourselves a little bit. You all know me as That Kraken fan page on Instagram and YouTube. A little bit about myself. I've lived in Washington the majority of my life. I'm a huge Seahawks, Mariners, and Kraken fan, and I dabble a little bit in Sounders soccer, but I don't know much about the sport. Still learning there. I made my page because I was so eager to talk about the Kraken with fans, and I wanted to get my thoughts out there on the sport, on the team, on a few of the teams surrounding the Kraken, or really the entire NHL in itself. And I wanted to create a community of fans, and I also saw this as an excuse to push myself to better understand the traditions and culture of hockey and to learn more about the Kraken and all the teams that they play. My goal was to ultimately have a show at some point, a podcast, video, something or whatever on YouTube, a YouTube channel, if you will. But I had no connections and no one that I really knew at the time of making this account that would want to do the show with me. That wasn't until I met my good friend here, and I'll pass the mic over to him and let him tell you a little bit about himself and why we decided to make this podcast.
Yeah, so you guys all know me on Instagram as Seattle Sports Season. I just rebranded to that. I'm super excited to be here, super excited to start this podcast with That Kraken fan page and just to start talking to all you guys that I've been interacting with in DMs and stuff for the last year, and just excited to be able to take your guys' questions and answer them on this podcast. So just a little bit about me and my page real quick before we get started is I was born and raised in the Seattle area. Grew up a huge Seattle sports fan. My dad was really into it, and so the games were just always on in our house, and I really started to develop a love for all four of the Seattle sports teams once the Kraken joined here as well. Just over a year ago, I moved down to Utah, though. I'm currently attending BYU so that I can continue to pursue my education. But while I was here, I missed the community feeling of Seattle sports and being around other fans all the time, because that's something that really just doesn't exist here. So last November, I decided to start my own podcast. My own page where I could just interact with fans of the Seattle sports teams and to kind of fulfill what I was missing while I was here. So I cover all four of the main sports teams in Seattle. So the Kraken, Mariners, Sounders, and Seahawks. I will cover the rain and the storm a little bit when they're in season, but not as in depth as the other teams. Yeah, but it's crazy that I've almost been running this page for a year here, coming up in about a month. I've loved interacting with all of you and decided that now that we have such a big following on Instagram, we really could start a podcast together. It's always been my dream to run a podcast as well. We met pretty early. We both kind of started our pages at the same time, and instantly just decided that this is kind of what we wanted to do. So this has been in the works for a while. I know I've talked to some of you guys about it. Some of you guys, it's the first you're hearing of this. And if so, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're ready to listen. And hopefully that the goal of this podcast is basically to take fans of one team and turn them into fans of all four teams. That's what we want to do. We want to just present you guys with the information, help you be well informed on what's going on, and just be able to help grow the fandom for all four sports and hopefully bring people into some of the lesser knowns and create super fans for all four sports. So super excited to do this, and couldn't be happier that the day is finally here.
It's finally here, and like you said, this has been in the works for quite some time of figuring out how we want to do it, when we want to do it, just all the little background details. So I'm just super, super excited to get this started. Anything else before we kind of just dive right in? I'm ready to start talking when you are.
Yeah, let's go. So I think to start off, we're just going to start talking about the Kraken. They played last night. They defeated the Nashville Predators 7-3, which was a huge showing for them after being shut out by Dallas just a few days ago on Sunday night. While that Dallas team is probably one of the best in the NHL, they looked kind of flat-footed in that game. They couldn't really get much going offensively, and we saw the complete opposite in this game. I thought they looked dangerous pretty much the entire game, and we saw that with 7 different scorers getting on the score sheet for this game. So it started off Riker Evans, followed by Oliver Bjorkstrand, Brandon Tanev, Jaden Schwartz, Jordan Eberle, Jared McCann, and Adam Larson finished it off with the 7th goal, an empty netter with about 2 minutes left in the game. While the scoreline may look lopsided, much of this game was pretty even, with the score being tied 3-3 after the end of the second period. And honestly, the momentum had felt like it had kind of shifted in the favor of the home team in the Predators. Luckily for us, Joey Decord in goal had some huge stops, which was really clutch for keeping the momentum in check and giving this team an opportunity in the third period to go on the run that they did, where they just looked unstoppable, quite frankly. This is what we've been waiting to see out of this team through the first 4 games. I think it's really cool that we saw 7 unique goal scorers in this game. I thought Joey Decord played pretty well. Most of those goals, the 3 goals that the Predators scored, I think 2 of them you can't really put on him at all. The third, he was in the right position. He was a little late rotating, but overall, he got, I think it was like his right rib kind of got on it. It bounced off him into the goal, which is just unlucky. But he was able to be there. I think he played a fantastic game, and I don't know, what were your thoughts on the Kraken in this game against Nashville and just overall to start the season?
Well, it's obviously a huge way to start the year, a 7-3 victory. You'll take it every single time. And last year, you can look back at the 7-4 win over Carolina, which is the first win of the season, and I believe it was 4 games in. So that one obviously felt great. But this one honestly looked much better than last year's game. Everything was solid. Really, after the first period has been bumpy all season for the Kraken. We have not scored up until this game in the first period. And though that they did score this game, obviously it came with some bumps. The period ending 3-2, and then in the second, even though it was a 3-3 score, going into the second intermission, they looked really good in the second. And that one goal that, as you mentioned, Joey, it just, unfortunately, he gets a huge chunk of it, but it just goes right through in between his arm and his side of his chest and just goes right in. But the defense played super well. They were really rough in the first period. I would honestly put both of the goals mainly on the defense, which has been the case for most of our games. Even though you're adding, and not necessarily the defensive players, but just the team playing defense as a whole, the middle of the ice being left open. I was actually looking, Joey Decord's only given up, all 7 goals that he's given up are all from either right in front of the crease or in the middle of the ice. He is perfect everywhere around on the ice, which is kind of crazy to think, and really just a great way to start for him to just have that one area that he kind of has to figure out. And that means the defense is doing a good job keeping pucks centered, which is both a blessing and a curse at the same time. But no, offense is buzzing. The boys are buzzing this game. Offense is buzzing. Defense cleaned it up. Joey played phenomenal, had a spectacular save in the third to keep the game tied, or the second, to keep the game tied. I love what I saw from him tonight. It was a fantastic game. Great bounce back from getting shut out over the Stars. I'm super excited to see how they do coming home here against the Flyers. Did you have anything else on the game?
Just real quick before we kind of dive deeper into what the Kraken have done this season. 4 out of 6 points on the first road trip of the year is huge. Especially as you mentioned last year, they didn't get their first win until the 4th game of the season. To start the year, if you combine the first home game, in which we probably should have won that game despite like about 15 bad seconds of ice there in the second period, taking 4 out of the 8 possible points to start the year, I think is a great place to be for this team, especially with 2 of those wins coming on the road. And as you mentioned, they're going to be back at home on Thursday. I guess that's tomorrow night against the Flyers. Interested to see what they do in net, as so far they've kind of rotated each game between Gru and Joey. I hope that they will play Joey in the net for tomorrow, but we shall see when in the morning when they come out with their lines. So, you want to take us into a bit of a deeper dive here for the Kraken to start the season?
Yeah. So obviously, we haven't super mentioned it. Kind of briefly did the intro, but you and I are both somewhat even on knowledge of football and baseball. The real spot where it kind of tips is hockey. We're both somewhat new to the sport, but I've dove a little bit deeper than you so far in the sport, and whereas you know a lot more about soccer. So when we are talking about the Kraken, it's going to be obviously 50-50 as much as possible, but some of the deep dive stuff I'll be covering, and then Seattle sports season here, he'll be covering more of the Sounders deep dive stuff since I'm very unfamiliar with the sport of soccer, unfortunately. But I'm learning. I'm excited to learn. I know the Sounders have a big matchup coming up, but we'll talk about that later on. So a couple of quick notes on the Kraken. I'm going to start with the man himself, Joey, who we were just talking about, Joey Decorum. He looks more professional this season. He looks like he's got better form. He's shaken off the rust from the offseason. He, as I said before, has yet to give up a goal from anywhere but the middle of the ice or just the high danger shots from the crease, which is great. He's, at the time of this recording, he is one goal below the GSAX, which is goals saved above expectation average, basically, which basically means, for example, let's say he faces 30 shots in a game. And based on the quality of the shots, the distance of the shot, the angle, and the speed of the shot, let's say out of all 30 of those shots, the math says the expected goals against him are supposed to be 3. If he only allows 2 goals, his GSAX for the game or for the season, if it's the first game of the season, would be +1 because he saved 1 more goal than expected. If he lets in 4 goals, the GSAX would be -1 because he allowed 1 more goal than expected on the shots that he faced. So, in short, it really helps us show how well he performs compared to what's expected from the type of shots that he faces. So, that's, it's a fine number to be at in the beginning of the season. So there's really no need to panic there. He's below 1. It's okay. Couple of other goalies are way up there. One that surprised me is Sam Montembeault on the Canadiens has a positive 12 right now, which is an insane number for the beginning of the season. But he's played really well. Props to him. He's one of my favorite goaltenders and has been for the time that he's been to the Canadiens. So I love to see him play really well. Kind of just staying in the realm of the goalies, Philip Grubauer is having a little rough start to the season as he normally does. He needs some time to warm up. He needs to stay healthy. He's not content with that backup role, so he's going to keep fighting for that first spot since it all signs point to Joey getting it. The extension, the playing time last year, the playing time he's probably going to be getting this year. But based off of what we've seen so far, based off of what we've seen when Gru came back last season, it's not a secured goalie 1 spot. So Gru knows that. Gru wants that spot. And it's not like he has hate for Joey or wants to steal it from Joey. He just knows, or maybe he thinks that he's good enough to take that 1 spot. So he's going to be playing hard for that, which is great. Gives him a great push to be playing as best as he can. Let's see. And then going down to Coachella Valley goalies. The Coachella Valley Firebirds, for those of you who don't know, are the AHL affiliate of the Kraken, the American Hockey League. The Kraken, their system allows for them to send players from Coachella Valley to Seattle. It's almost like in football, like a practice squad, except for your practice squad is playing in their own league. You can kind of just send players back and forth between. There's some complications with it sometimes when they're a more higher paid player or if they have a certain contract clause, but for the most part, as long as they are a minor league player, you can send them back and forth as you will. If you've been following me for a while, you know that last year Cale Fleury had an ungodly amount of transactions. I think he had 12 to finish the season, which is much higher, especially since 8 of them happened in the last 2 weeks of the season. But anyway, in Coachella Valley, Ales Stezka is the starting goalie down there. They've played one game so far. They start the next game in 12 minutes, actually. I'll be keeping an eye on that while we're recording here. But his first game, 2 goals allowed, 23 saves on 25 shots. A solid start for Stezka, especially a goalie who struggled as a backup last year for Coachella behind Chris Drieger. So that was good to see him have a great start to the year. Very excited for him to get the starting role. I love him. He's a hilarious guy, and really an underrated goaltender in terms of minor league goaltenders. Backing him up this season will be Nicholas Coco, who is one of the biggest prospects that the Kraken have. He's the biggest goalie prospect that they have. I thought he was going to be in a different minor league, but the Kraken decided to put him right up in Coachella, which I'm super excited about. He did incredible in the rookie tourney in LA, really good in rookie training camp. So I'm really excited to see how he plays. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on him. I don't know if he's starting tonight or not. I'm waiting for the starting lineup to kind of pop up somewhere. But when I get that news, if he is starting, that would be incredible to see. Any thoughts on the goaltenders this season so far from you?
No, kind of just a lot of the same. I think Grubauer, like you said, he's not content at all. And he was at one point kind of the face of this team right when they became a franchise. He instantly got that contract from the Kraken. And I think he still sees himself as that type of player. I don't think that I think in his mind, the expectation for him is that he's a number one goalie on a team in the NHL. And right now, that's going to be his goal. He's going to play as well as he can every opportunity that he gets. And I think that he still has a bit left in the tank. And I think that with consistent playing time, he could come back to some of the form that we've seen him in the past. However, I don't think that he's going to be receiving that type of playing time that he needs to be able to build into that rhythm. I think that Joey right now is just significantly better than him in majority of aspects of the goaltending role. And so I think that as we saw with the extension to Joey just a little bit ago, I think they're going to continue to ride with him until he gives them a reason not to. So
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I love Grubauer. I just think Joey's much more qualified for the starting roles that we've seen so far. That doesn't mean to say that I think Grubauer is going to be terrible or bad by any means, but I do think definitely that Joey has more than secured that starting goalie position. But I'm curious to see how it goes. You never know. Anything could happen, and we could be seeing Grubauer as starter or Joey, either one.
I think tomorrow we'll say a lot about who the team is looking at right now, as both of them currently have 2 starts under their belt. It's went grew, Joey, and with the day off in between, there's no reason that both of them shouldn't be available for tomorrow. And so I think who we see play tomorrow is going to be a huge indication of who they're going to ride with for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you're playing a Flyers team that unfortunately lost to the Oilers in overtime. So they're looking for a bounce back win here in a game that they should have won. They gave up some late goal, or they came back down by 1, had some really good opportunities in overtime, and unfortunately gave Connor McDavid a breakaway. And he actually missed the net, but Draisaitl was right behind him to clean up on the rebound. So they're looking for some revenge here. So hopefully we can answer with our own little fire from the Kraken. Let's see, a couple other notes about some other players. Brandon Montour looks solid and is just an elite player. I love watching his skating, his passing, his power shooting is just incredible. He has like a massive impact on the ice. It's really hard to not notice that he's out there when he's on the ice and playing. He makes a significant difference on the ice everywhere, defensively, offensively. He was a solid pickup in the offseason, so good on Ron Francis for going and getting such an elite player to help this team progress forward. I've loved watching him play so far. Let's see. Jamie Alexiak is another player I kind of want to highlight here. He has cleaned up since his first game. His first game, he was a major reason for 2 of the Kraken's 3 goals allowed. He gives up a breakaway on a fumbled pass in the game in the second period. He's saved by Montour, who is able to get in between the 2-on-1 and reject the pass. which opens up an opportunity for Grubauer to go out and challenge the puck, and he makes an easy pad save on that. If Monty's not there, Grubauer has to worry about the right side and the left side, and like more times, more than half the time, the goalie is going to get scored on unless they make an incredible desperation save. So, he owes Monty a dinner for that one, but he's really cleaned it up since then. He struggled with like the stick lifts and poke checking on the first goal that Jordan Kyrou got, where Kyrou just goes right around him and nets one right through the 5-hole of Grubauer. And then he passes right to one of the Blues, unfortunately, on the last goal, and gives a breakaway that unfortunately Grubauer can't stop, and that ties the game. The third goal later on, not really on him, but he's just cleaned it up. Defense is a lot better. He's made a lot more shots on goal, more than we normally see from him in the beginning of his season too, or really in his season in general. So I'm hoping to see him pass his personal record for goals this season, but we'll see. He's doing great in assists so far. So let's see. Larson and Dunn, two other players I want to highlight. They're playing very well. Their passes and shot blocking especially is looking incredible. Great leadership there from Larson already off the bat. He's taken a lot of questions in the post-game conferences, and the way he's answering them is very solid. Good leadership. He's not really calling anyone out, but also, making sure that it's obvious where they need to be fixing things and working on stuff. As a whole for the team, I'd like to see the team in better positions defensively, and this isn't just calling out the defense, but the offense as well. Lots of shots in the dead center that were allowed, especially in the Blues and the Wild game, and that leads up to what I was saying about Joey Decord making saves everywhere but the middle of the ice. Most of the goals against the Kraken have been right out in the middle, in between four of the Kraken, and just no one's getting a stick in there, no one's putting their body out in there, or they're just moving out of position. And some of it's just learning. A couple of those were on Shane Wright or Riker Evans, who are both new to the league. Shane Wright's rookie season, so they're going to learn. It's a teaching point. But I'd love to see the team clean up defensively with some positioning. And then the power kill and power play is somewhat struggling to start the season, but they're learning Coach Campbell's new system, so I imagine it's going to be a bit bumpy to start off the year. But hopefully can get those percentages of PK and power plays up a little more in the next few games. Offensive scheme looks like it's starting to click. Even the players are saying at post-game conferences, as I said before, Adam Larson was talking the other day. After our loss to the Stars, he actually said things are starting to click. We're understanding everything now. We're all starting to trust each other more. So that's really great to see that the players are starting to adapt to the scheme, and they're hopefully enjoying it and loving it. Any thoughts from you before I close this out from the Kraken and we move on?
No, I've just been really encouraged from what I've saw so far. I feel like a lot of the things that we saw last year, especially towards the end of the season, are looking better. And honestly, just finishing the road trip with a statement like that, despite being tied 3-3 going into the third period, just says a lot, I think, about this team and what they want to accomplish and what they know they can accomplish this season. And just that game basically just felt like they were not going to lose it. From the very beginning, they felt like the better team. And despite a few things not going their way, and despite some pushes from the Nashville Predators, they refused to lose that game. And we saw that. We saw the resilience. And I think that was a lot of what the team was missing last year. So if we can continue to just fight in every game, I think this team's going to be able to return back to the NHL playoffs and hopefully go on another run like they did back in 22 or 23? I think it was 23.
The 2022-23 season, or 2022-23 season,
Yeah.
Yes. They went on that run, which was just incredible. That really pulled me in as somebody who was kind of on the fence of watching it. Playoff hockey is something else.
Yeah.
I really want to get back, because it's, in my opinion, it's the best playoffs in sports. But regardless of if it's the best or if it's the worst, it is something else. It is a whole nother level of everything. The fans, the players, the way that the game moves differently, the high stakes. I love it. Absolutely, I love it. So just to close us out here on the Kraken, current kind of statistics leaders for everyone. The current team leaders for those. The Jordan Eberle is leading in goals right now with 3. He's also leading in points with 4. The assist leader officially is Jared McCann with 2, but also with 2 is Riker Evans, Brandon Montour, Chandler Stevenson, Yanni Gord, Andrei Burakovsky, and Jamie Alexiak. And as I said, they all have 2 assists. The leader in penalty minutes, to no surprise whatsoever, is the Pepper Pot himself, Yanni Gord. He with 7. It's going to be him or Ty Cartier. So Gord's going to be leading that so far. Leading the plus minus, and this actually kind of surprised me considering what I said before, but the plus minus leader is Jamie Alexiak with a positive 4. And for those of you, again, who don't know, a plus minus stat, if you are on the ice when a goal is scored for your team, everyone that was on the ice gets a plus 1. If you are on the ice when your team was scored against, you get a -1. And this kind of helps keep track of, coaches can look at that and say, well, let me see, this guy has a -6 after 5 games, which means that he was on the ice for 6 goals against, whereas this guy here has a +8 in those 6 games, which means he's a huge factor to why we're scoring goals. So Alexiak, to my surprise, is leading that with a positive 4, and no one's tying him. He's just outright the leader of that one. And then leading in goaltending right now is Joey Decord with a 3.37 goals allowed average, and with a save percentage of .901 with a 2-0-0 record. That is all I have for the Kraken for this episode. Anything else from you?
No. Switching, I think we're going to switch lens over here. Talk about the Seahawks 49ers game that happened last Thursday. This was a while ago, as is, the Seahawks are now preparing to face the Falcons on Sunday, but we thought that we'd cover this game just so that we had some Seahawks to talk about. Looking back, it was a tough game, I'm not going to lie. It was tough in pretty much every aspect of the game. Every major stat that you look at that usually determines if a team wins or loses in the game, the Seahawks were down in. Starting in the turnover battle, the Seahawks turned the ball over 3 times, 2 picks from Geno Smith, plus a kickoff fumble, which was costly as well. And the defense, unable to force any turnovers once again, continues to be a problem for them, and it continues to be a problem for the offense turning the ball over. Looking at penalties, the Seahawks had 9 penalties compared to the 49ers 5. And again, just not where you want to be. The Seahawks were just 44% on third down, which is awful. 7 for 16. Again, need to be better there. And the one that I really thought just killed the Seahawks in this game was the rushing yards, specifically the yards per carry. The 49ers finished with 228 rushing yards, which is unacceptable. And that was averaging just about 7 yards per carry from 2 backup running backs in the NFL. This wasn't Christian McCaffrey. This isn't this 49ers team that you're used to seeing, that you're used to hearing about. This was quite honestly just extremely embarrassing for the Seahawks defense, and especially from a coach who takes pride in his defense, who's a defensive minded, who's widely known as one of the best defensive minds in the league. I know that he was angry about it. He talked about it a bit in his post-game press conference, but they need to do better at limiting the run. And the Seahawks on offense, just 52 rushing yards on 2.6 yards per carry. That is awful. Hopefully you'd love to be around that 4 yards per carry mark. And we were nowhere near that. Finally, just like looking at the game flow and the feeling, the Seahawks had an opportunity in this game. At the end of the first quarter, it was only 3-0, and at halftime, it was only it was 16-3. But we had opportunities in that first half to capitalize. Looking specifically at, we had our first drive through an interception, Geno Smith in the end zone. That's huge. But the defense comes out. They make a stand despite allowing a 7.5-minute drive. They held the 49ers to a field goal, which felt like a huge morale boost for the team. Right after that, the Seahawks, they come down, they punt in 6 plays. Again, not what you want to see after your defense was just on the field for 2.5 minutes, immediately making them come back on the field. And luckily for the offense, the defense actually forced the punt. They forced it 3-and-out, allowing the 49ers just 4 yards on 3 plays, and gave the ball right back to the offense with another chance to answer back. Once again, this is still a 3-0 game. And once again, the Seahawks offense goes 3-and-out. Again, just lack of ability to capitalize on their opportunities. After that punt, the 49ers had a 1-play touchdown. Deebo Samuel was kind of just left wide open in the middle of the field, and then Julian Love took a pretty bad angle on the tackle, trying to go for the pick. I think his mind just got caught up trying to go for the pick while also trying to make a tackle. And he also talked about that in his post-game presser on how he needs to play better. But yeah, that was multiple possessions there where the Seahawks had an opportunity to answer back to that initial field goal from the 49ers, and they were just unable to do so. And talking about Julian Love's post-game comments, he said, I think we just need to play clean ball. You're not going to beat that team going -3 in the turnover battle, and I don't know what the penalty numbers were, but I don't think it could have been good for us. He continued by saying, that's what it takes, man. I mean, I think we know that we have the people and we know how to execute. However, you're seeing a lot of great plays out there, but it's just too many one-offs. And I think that he summarizes that game up perfectly, because there's opportunities, but just miscommunications, penalties really held the Seahawks back in this game. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you saw from the Seahawks last Thursday night.
Yeah, as you said, everything from penalties to miscommunications to turnovers, not in our favor. It really sucked. It was a tough game to watch because it felt like a Pete Carroll game almost.
Yeah.
It felt like very similar to the oh my goodness, where you can't get on top of this team. We go down by a lot. We start to come back, and then we just mistake after mistake. Offense can't get it together, can't get the ball moving. I will say with Pete Carroll, we ran a lot more than we normally did, but it was a lot of running it right into the pile and not feeding it to the outside, attempting pitches, check downs, anything like that. And I know a check down is technically not a run, but normally it's to your running back. So, but yeah, the defense needs more turnovers. It's something that has to happen, especially like you said, with the coach that we have that has the kind of credentials that he has. You've got to be getting those turnovers on defense. I don't know the official number of how many turnovers we have, but I know we have less than 3 or 4 on the year, I think. It's not very many. And that's between special teams and defense. So the turnovers need to come up more. I know injuries have hurt and the depth hasn't been super great. I'm a little bit surprised because the D-line depth feels like it could be a little bit better. You have players like, Byron Murphy who have been out, obviously. Leonard Williams has been out, kind of in and out a little bit. Even though he was back for this game. But I really feel like depth chart wise, I'm just kind of surprised to see this D-line not being able to get too much pressure, even though they're not superstars, You're not expecting, Draymond Jones to go out there and get 3 sacks a game, but he's a good player. Hoping that the defensive line can step it up a little bit. I know we just found out a few hours ago that Byron Murphy was a limited participant in practice today. So hopefully I'd love to see him be playing on Sunday. I expect that he will be. But that's really good news to hear that he could be back. Tariq Woolen has been put as questionable. He did not practice today. Rashawn Jenkins, as of a few hours ago, was put on the IR, so he will not be playing on Sunday. We don't have Artie Burns, so there's more depth that's gone in that secondary. And then somebody else, too, was just announced to be out. Stone Forsythe did not practice today with a hand injury, which brings you down to your third string. Is he right guard is his position? You're running out of, or right tackle, excuse me. That brings you to your third string right tackle with Fant and Lucas being out and now Forsythe being questionable. So hopefully he can be back. He did a really good job against the Niners. One might even call him Boulder Forsythe against Nick Bosa. He did a good job covering him. I know Nick Bosa had a lot of pressures that game, but he didn't have too many hits on Geno. I'm not sure if he recorded a sack or not.
Did not record a sack.
He did not record a sack, yeah. But he did a really good job, played a good game. I was very impressed to see him play well for a second string tackle. Offensively, I'd love to see players like JSN and Lockett be targeted a little bit more. I know they got more receptions and more, at least more yards than DK this game. But I cannot tell you the amount of times I see replays and I look in the corner of my screen and I see JSN has more than enough room to get past to, or Tyler's on a route where he's got some room too, and we just keep throwing it to DK. And part of me is wondering if my theory about Grubb previously coaching the Penix Odunze kind of combination back in UW, I wonder if that's kind of carrying over to this offense and he's trying to get the same chemistry going with Geno and DK, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. DK is a beast. He's a big player. Geno's proven that he can be an accurate quarterback, that he can be a serviceable quarterback. But it seems to not really be working too much, seeing as DK's gotten the majority of targets over the last few games that we've played this season. Yeah, I'd love to see some more handoffs to Walker and Charbonnet in the first half, just to kind of get a feel for the defense. That way your running game can open up a little more after some adjustments in the second half, and maybe you don't run as much. Those are kind of my thoughts from the game.
Yeah, and even Coach talked about that in his post-game presser after the game on Thursday. He talked about, he's just basically, the summary of what he said was, when you get behind in the second half by multiple scores, you basically just have to chuck the ball. He said that's on the whole team, defense and offense. We have to be within a score in these games to be able to run the ball instead of just dropping back every down. And I think it's great that he put that accountability on the offense and the defense, because obviously offense needs to get better. They need to be more consistent. They need to be able to convert on third down, but also they need to be able to run more plays. And we, like you said, you'd love to see JSN and Lockett get more targets. Also want to see our running backs get more carries, but that both of those things require just running more sets on the offensive end. It is crazy that DK got 11 targets last game, and he came down with just 3 of them. And I feel like I agree with that statement. We need to throw the ball more to our other wide receivers, kind of just spread the ball out a little bit, because DK was getting pretty heavily focused by the 49ers defense, and yet Geno Smith continued to just try and force the ball into him. Granted, DK did have a few drops that didn't help the 11 targets to 3 receptions. However, some of those were just uncatchable balls that he was just trying to get there on a prayer. But I also think that comes down to having enough time to throw the ball. And right now, Geno Smith is not getting enough time to throw the ball. And I've seen some stats where Geno Smith is elite when he has time to throw the ball. When he has time to go through his progressions and throw to the receiver that he wants to with the correct footwork, he is deadly. And I think we saw that a lot through his first few years with his completion percentage, where he had some of the highest completion percentage that we've seen in a while in the NFL. But now he just doesn't have time to go through those progressions. And I think that comes back to what we're seeing with DK is he drops back, people are immediately in his face, his first read is DK, and it's either going there or he's getting sacked. Or he has to try and make a play with his feet, which, while he can at times, that's not his skill set. That's not what he's not Russell Wilson. We know that. He's much more of a pocket passer, drop it back, get in rhythm, release it on time. Where Russell Wilson was much more get out of the pocket, make plays with his feet. But yeah, we need to see more dominance in the trenches on both sides of the ball, is my opinion. And as we do so, I think we'll be able to have a lot of the other problems. They'll take care of themselves. Because as you get more pressure on the defense, your secondary doesn't have to cover for as long. And so there can't be those breakdowns that we're seeing because the opposing quarterback has to get rid of the ball. And as we get more time for Geno to throw the ball, we can actually see what Geno Smith and let him actually display his skill set and what he's good at. And right now, we're seeing just honestly bad play from the defensive line and the offensive line. Besides Connor Williams, props to Connor Williams. He's been playing fantastic. I saw PFF the other day. He had the most snaps in the NFL in Week 6 without allowing a pressure. So props to him against a good defensive line on the 49ers.
Yeah, I think he's done a great job. maybe not the last game since he struggled a little bit, but I think Charles Cross has been pretty good too. He's been one of the
Yeah.
most reliable offensive linemen for the Seahawks. He struggled against the Niners for sure, though, which is kind of unfortunate to see. Is he wasn't even facing Dre Greenlaw. I'm not even sure who he was facing. But just frustrating to see like the offensive line after so many years of fans complaining about it and it being just an obvious reason to why this offense hasn't been able to get going since like, Russell Wilson's time ending here is the offensive line, and we haven't fixed it yet. We haven't made any major moves to fix it yet. And when we do, you got the injuries that happen. You got, I'm not going to call him an elite offensive line, but you got your George Fant going on the IR after one game. You got your Abraham Lucas getting injured. Your Anthony Bradford and Connor Williams and Stone Forsythe being questionable and day-to-day and everything else that adds up to that. So really unfortunate that we had to deal with some of these injuries and some of these issues of not having talented enough offensive linemen. But I do agree, got to win in the trenches. I did see the Seahawks added a trade. They traded for the Jaguars defensive end, who I've heard is a very underrated defensive end in the league. I'm very curious to see how he plays and if he will play on Sunday because I know he needs some time to warm up. Super quick, brief intermission here. Firebirds just scored a goal on the Calgary Wranglers. They're up 1-0 with 16:20 left in the first on a power play goal. Back to the Seahawks, as what you were going to say.
Yeah, just looking ahead real quick to this Sunday's game against the Falcons. It's going to be a tough game. The Falcons have been about as advertised. They're 4-2 on the season so far. They have some really, really talented players on the offensive end. Kirk Cousins is a solid quarterback. He's been a good quarterback his whole year. He's having a pretty decent season so far with 1,600 passing yards with 9 touchdowns to 5 picks. He will turn the ball over a bit, so that's an opportunity for the defense to hopefully they can grab an interception or two. Bijan Robinson, obviously one of the most skilled running backs in the league when he gets carries, when he gets touches. And Drake London is an extremely young, talented receiver that they have over there. He has just about 430 yards and 4 touchdowns on the season. And this is a team that lights up the scoreboard on both sides of the ball. They score a lot, and their defense also gives up a lot of points. As we can see in their last 3 games, against the Panthers, they scored 38. Against the Buccaneers, they scored 36, and against the Saints, they scored 26. All of which games that they won. They gave up 20, 30, and 24 points respectively in those games. So this isn't a defense that is going to shut you out. There's going to be a possibility for yards. It probably is going to It's probably going to end up being a shootout with the way our defense is playing at the moment and just the depth that we have depending on who's available. But I think that this offense is going to be able to have a good game and bounce back after the Niners game. I'm expecting Geno Smith to have a really solid game. And hopefully, I think if the Seahawks can put up 30 points in this game, we should be able to win easily. I have enough faith in the defense to hold them under 30. That I think if we can do that, we should set ourselves up to be in a good position to win the game.
Yeah, I'd like to see the secondary hold up well. The Falcons, I think, have a very underrated depth chart in the wide receiver core, at least.
Yeah,
you got Drake
sure.
London, Darrell Mooney, Ray McLeod. Those guys are all, very good
I
wide
forgot
receivers
Kyle
as well.
Pitts, too. Kyle Pitts
Yeah,
playing
Kyle
tight
Pitts
end.
is their tight end.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so it's gonna be interesting to see how the defense adjusts with no Artie Burns and no Reek Woolen, since both of them are on the IR right now. Or, excuse me, Woolen is questionable, but I assume he's not playing, seeing as he has not practiced this week. If he is, that would be fantastic to see, but he's probably not going to be at 100%. So curious to see how the secondary handles that, how Mike McDonald adjusts to the, having to take on these 3 top wide receivers and tight end. The Falcons do have a couple of questionable players on their defense. I'm not seeing anybody of certain importance that I'm like, oh, they're out. Like, that's great. Their strong safety is out. Justin Simmons, I know he's been pretty good for them. Or excuse me, he's questionable. But they've got a couple of linebackers who are questionable for this game, and a couple of players on the IR, which means that they are on some second strings, especially in the secondary for them. Uh, yeah, curious to see, especially how the defense adjusts. I think the offense is going to do just fine. I do think it's going to be tough to play this good Falcons defense, but I'm more curious to see how the defense handles it.
Yeah, but before that game in Atlanta on Sunday, the Seattle Sounders will close their season on Saturday night against Portland, MLS Decision Day. I mean, what more could you possibly want than to close the season against their rivals from down south in the Portland Timber? This game, while both teams have already qualified for the playoffs, has some huge implications in both playoff standings and in terms of qualifications for certain things. A lot more on the line for the Sounders and the Timber, but it being a rivalry game, there's always stuff at stake. But for the Sounders, with a win on Saturday, they have a chance to win the Cascadia Cup, which is huge. For those that don't know, the Cascadia Cup is basically a mini little tournament thing that between the Sounders, the Timber, and the Vancouver Whitecaps. Basically, just whoever did the best head-to-head against all those teams gets a trophy. And it would be huge to have the Cascadia Cup in Seattle. With a win, they will qualify for the CONCACAF Champions League. For those that don't know, CONCACAF Champions League is the best teams in North America qualify for this tournament, and the winner actually qualifies for what's called the Club World Cup, which I'll be talking a little bit later. With a win, the Sounders will also clinch the third seed in the Western Conference for the playoffs. Win or loss, they will be home for the first round of the playoffs, which is huge in a 3-game series, getting 2 home games if needed in that first round. However, for the Timbers, they're currently the 9 seed, which means they're going to have to play in a wild card game just to be able to get into the playoffs. However, with a win and a little bit of luck on their side, they could find themselves as high as the 7 seed or the 8 seed, depending on what goes on elsewhere around the league. The 8 seed would be huge for them, as they would get to play a home playoff. They would get to host the wild card game in Portland, and the 7 seed would be huge just to jump out of that wild card and move immediately into the round of 16. So a lot of stuff on the line here in this game. Obviously, Portland, Seattle, hated rivalry. I'm so pumped for this game. I always love Portland. I don't think I can handle us losing at home to them for another year. It's just been disappointing, our results with them over the last few seasons, and this is a perfect opportunity to kind of get rid of those demons, in the season on a high, going into the playoffs, and be able to clinch all the things that I talked about earlier. In other news around Seattle soccer, it was announced yesterday that the Sounders will host 6 games in the Club World Cup, which is huge for this city and for this team. Those 6 games, we don't know what they will include. However, we do know that 3 of them will be their own group stage games in the Club World Cup. We do not know what the other 3 games will be as of right now. But for those that don't know, the Club World Cup, this is the first edition of this version of the tournament. It's going to be the top 32 teams from around the world over the last few years playing in a classic style bracket. There's going to be 8 pools of 4 teams, play round robin in your pool, and top 2 will move on directly to the knockout stage. Just like for those that know how the FIFA World Cup is managed, it's the same type of setup as that. Knockout stage will just be 1-game elimination games all the way to the final. There will be no third place game, so it's just winner takes all in this competition. But this is huge news for the Sounders, because this means the possibility of teams like Man City, Liverpool, a bunch of these big name clubs from Europe could be coming to Seattle. We don't know the groups yet. They're going to be announced pretty soon as the tournament is taking place in the summertime. But it would just be amazing to have one of those quality of teams here for a game that matters. This isn't a game where just a bunch of random fans are going to be there because they like Manchester City and they want to see some of their players play. This isn't a summer tour. This is a tournament that means a lot for every team involved. Everybody wants to be the first ever to win this version of the tournament, to take that trophy home. And to be able to just watch one of those teams in front of a packed out Lumen Field, I just think it would be amazing. Huge for our market, huge for the MLS to be able to be publicized like that. Hopefully the Sounders can put up a decent showing. It's going to be rough against these teams that are significantly more skilled than us. I don't know how it's going to quite work. I don't know if they'll be playing their real players in the group stage, but I imagine they will be playing most of their guys. The Sounders will be full strength for that, as it's going to be a break in the MLS season. It being the summer being the off season for many of the European clubs, but I'm so pumped for that. Even if you're not a huge Sounders fan, not a huge soccer fan, when those tickets go on sale, be on the lookout, because that's going to be something you don't want to miss. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get to watch the Sounders take on a team with that quality at home. And so do not miss out on that. And it's also serving as a huge test for the city of Seattle and how we can manage the World Cup games that we'll be getting in 2026. So overall, just amazing news for the Sounders. It looks like the president of FIFA was really impressed by our facilities, by our stadium, by our city. So just awesome for Seattle on a national scale to get recognized like that. Any thoughts on the Sounders before we kind of start to close up?
Yeah, so I actually have one question before I kind of give my thoughts. When are the dates for when that's supposed to happen? Is that next year in the summer?
Yeah, it's going to be in the summer 2025. If you give me
Okay.
one sec. Club World Cup dates. The tournament will take place the 15th of June to the 13th of July, 2025.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I believe that the MLS will be taking a break during that time so that their teams that are in this competition can focus on that, much like they do a break for Leagues Cup. Because it's going to be a pretty big deal, and I feel like they're going to be wanting to be fully committed to that. I don't know that for sure, but all the European teams will be on break at that point. So it's going to be huge. The eyes of the soccer world will be on this tournament, so I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, that's super exciting. Obviously, as I've stated many times already in this episode, I'm not the biggest soccer person. Um, but even I know the rivalry that is between the Portland Timbers and Seattle Sounders. So even I'm going to be keeping an eye on this game. I know that we've not done well against them the past few years, so I'd really like to see them play a great game here. Make the playoffs a little easier on them for getting this win. But I am, even before we talked about it, when I first found out, like, oh my goodness, like all these big teams could be coming to Seattle for that Club Cup. Like, that's super exciting, super huge for the city of Seattle, huge for the Sounders. It's the city is an underrated soccer, excuse me, underrated soccer city for sure. And the Sounders have a very loud, very incredible fan base that even as somebody who's not super involved, I see it, I notice it, I hear it. So that's just such a huge blessing for the city, for this fan base to be able to have that happen.
Yeah, for sure. It's nice to finally get recognized.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
after we talk about just a little bit of information about the podcast, after we discuss kind of what's been going on over the last week, we're going to try and do two sections consistently every week. That being our minor league player shout outs and introduce listener questions. So every week we're going to try and answer 1 to 2 of your guys' questions for us, just so that way we can kind of stay engaged with our following. And that was one of the reasons we originally started this, was just to interact with you guys. So that's really important to us. So if you have any questions that you want us to talk about, make sure to leave those in a comment or message us on Instagram, on the Seattle Sports Scene Instagram page, and we'll be able to respond to you right there. But this being the first episode, we don't have any listener questions to go through today, so we'll just go with the minor league player shoutouts. I'll start with my minor league player shoutout, and that's going to go to Cole Emerson. Cole Emerson is one of the Mariners' top prospects, if not the top prospect. After finishing the season in Everett, he got assigned to go play in the Arizona Complex League, which, for those of you that don't know, it's basically like an extra developmental league that the MLB puts on for each team. Basically, this Mariners can just invite some of their minor leaguers that they want to work with more to the Arizona Complex League and have them play games against some of the other teams' top prospects. In his first week, Cole Emerson went 11 for 20 with 6 doubles, 6 RBIs, good for a 550 average, a 550 on base percentage, and a 1.4 OPS, which is on base plus slugging. That is an incredible week for someone who is going against players majority way older than him, and some of the top prospects in baseball, and he just continues right where he left off, just absolutely destroying baseballs. I'm so excited to see what he does next season and to see how fast he can continue to progress on the way to the major leagues. He's only 19, and honestly, like, the sky's the limit for this kid. Mariners took him in the first round, I believe, just last year, and he has been fantastic for them ever since they drafted him. So, fantastic weekend, fantastic week from Cole Emerson. I look forward to seeing what he does in the rest of the Arizona Complex League.
Yeah, he's been such a great player, and yeah, he was drafted as the 22nd pick in the 2023 draft. So it's been incredible to watch like how fast he's progressed in like a year. Going through, he's in Everett was the last place he played, correct? With the Aqua Sox. Yeah, so he went through Modesto very quickly. Such a talented player. I'm super excited to see how he does, and hopefully we can get him up in Seattle very soon. I have 2 minor league shout-outs this week. I've got Lazaro Montes, who's also a Mariners prospect. He this season, between playing with Modesto and Everett, had 21 home runs, 5 stolen bases, and 129 hits. His average in Everett was 260. I was not able to get his average between both leagues, but he played super solid. He finished off the year great. He's been compared to, in terms of like a physical standpoint and like a strength standpoint, to players such as like Yordan Alvarez. Not necessarily saying he's going to be Yordan Alvarez, or he is, but he's a big guy with lots of strength, and he's been compared to somebody who is also a very big, tall guy with lots of strength. So super excited to see him play. And then my other shout out is to Jagger Furcus, who is playing in Coachella Valley with the Firebirds, that Kraken affiliate. He was playing with the Moose Jaw Warriors in the WHL, which, for those of you who love or know of the Seattle Thunderbirds, it's the same league as the Thunderbirds. It's just a different division. But he was playing in Moose Jaw, and he had a phenomenal season there. I believe he led the league in goals. He led the team for sure. He had a Michigan goal. He had a couple attempted, trick plays or trick shots that almost went through. But his Michigan goal was the biggest one of the year that went through. He is your Trevor Zegras type player who will try those tricky plays, who will try making those stellar passes, who will try things that players don't normally try. So I'm super excited to see him in Coachella Valley. He scored 1 goal on 2 shots in the first game, and I believe he already has a shot in this game happening right now. As the Firebirds, unfortunately, are down 2-1. They give up 2 back-to-back goals within this about 2 minutes or so. But regardless of that game happening now, super excited for Furcus. Really excited to see how he plays and how he does.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome to see how all of these players continue to develop and hopefully can reach the major leagues for their respective sports as soon as possible, because we are so excited to see what they can do in their careers. Finally, just to wrap up, I'm going to go through quickly some of the other scores and updates from sports going on in Seattle. It was announced yesterday the Gold Glove finalist. Dylan Moore was announced as a finalist for the Utility Award, while Mauricio Dubon of the Houston Astros will most likely win that award. It's honestly a huge honor for Demo to finally get respected by some of the national media, and just the overall talented player that he is. Being able to play basically any position, any day, at any moment's notice, being able to switch mid-game to wherever the Mariners need him to play is such a huge, valuable asset for us to have. And Cal Raleigh was also nominated to be the catcher for the Catcher Gold Glove Award. Quite honestly, I will be pretty upset if he does not win that award. He has been fantastic defensively, and if you take into consideration the fact that he calls for the best pitching staff in baseball, there's honestly no reason that he shouldn't win that award. His framing's great, his outs above average are fantastic, and the way that he calls games and just keeps his young pitching staff cool, calm, and collected the whole season is incredible. So props to both of them. I thought that Josh Rojas was probably snubbed. He had a fantastic season in his first year at third base. His first full season at third base, and it's going to be tough because of the names that play in the AL at third base, but I thought he deserved some love for sure. Unfortunately, that did not happen, but still props to Josh Rojas on an amazing season defensively down there at third. Really quickly, just some other scores. UW football lost 40-16 to Iowa. For those of you that know college football, giving up 40 to Iowa is pretty ridiculous. They unfortunately are now 4-3, looking ahead ranked to play number 16 ranked Indiana after their bye week this week. WSU continues to be on a roll. They have only lost one game this season. They won 25-17 on the road at Fresno State. Unfortunately for them, just because of their strength of schedule playing mostly Mountain West teams, it's going to be hard for them to get noticed nationally. However, in my opinion, they probably should be getting fairly close to being in the top 25. Looking ahead on Saturday, they'll be taking on Hawaii at home with a opportunity to continue to their winning brand of football, as Hawaii has not looked great this season. The Reign have 2 games left. They're tied for last in the NWSL. Very disappointing for them and their season for them and their fans. I know they expect more. Just a season that's been rattled with injuries and just unable to remain consistent throughout the whole year for them. But I'm sure that they will be back better next year. And finally, the NBA continues to give Seattle at least a little bit of love. The city of Seattle hosted a NBA preseason game this last week between the Clippers and the Blazers. There's a lot of notable Seattle celebrities at the game. We saw Isaiah Thomas, Pete Carroll, Brian Wu, just to name a few of them. Seattle is just such an amazing basketball town, and as we continue to get attention from the basketball community, I think it's inevitable that the Sonics will be back here sooner rather than later. It's just too much of a perfect fit. There's too many, There's too many people that are fighting to get it here for it not to happen. So, yep. I thought the game was fantastic. The energy in the crowd was amazing. It ended up being a 2-point game. And yeah, I hope the Sonics come back soon because this is a basketball city at heart, and they're itching to get their hands back on their team. So, just to wrap up, any thoughts that you have on any of those games or awards nominations?
I will be shocked if Cal Raleigh doesn't win the award. Looking up the other finalists that are in line with him, he clears them by a mile in terms of home runs. 39 home runs, 120 hits. Everyone else has got somewhere in the 90s for hits, and then 6 to 10 home runs. Like, I will be just absolutely floored if he doesn't win it. Now, that's obviously in terms of hitting. In terms of fielding, the numbers could be different. I did not check that, but if Cal doesn't win it, he'll be snubbed, in my opinion, 3 years in a row of a Gold Glove finalist. I think that's about it for me. I would love to see basketball in Seattle.
Yes.
The Sonics coming back. I'm not a huge basketball guy, never have been, but I understand the love for the Sonics and the culture in Seattle with basketball. And I think it's just a huge sign to see for the NBA, to see we hosted a preseason game here in Seattle, and we had celebrity Seattle players showing up. We had celebrities in general show up. It was packed. It was sold out like for a preseason game. Like the city wants it. And I know there's a couple other cities in conversation for kind of battling with Seattle for that expansion eventually. But I think Seattle should get it. I think Seattle has proven that they should get it, and I think they will get it. So I would love to see the Sonics back here sooner rather than later.
100% agree. The basketball culture here is just so rich between
It's
like
incredible.
the high school talent that we have year in and year out. The
Mhm.
Huskies have been good. They haven't been good the last few seasons, but they've been solid. Also, Seattle will be hosting March Madness games at Climate Pledge this upcoming tournament. It's just a basketball city. When the Sonics are here, they control the market, and I can't wait to see them back. Just to wrap up, if you found us through Instagram, I appreciate you coming and listening. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube, go over and subscribe to the YouTube. The link is in our bio on Instagram. It will also probably be listed in a comment down in the description of this video. If you're listening on Spotify, go find us on YouTube and follow us on Instagram. If you just found this podcast, make sure to go follow us on all 3 platforms. It's greatly appreciated. If you want more coverage from us, make sure to check out both of our personal accounts on Instagram at that Kraken fan page and at Seattle Sports Season. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We are going to be trying to release episodes weekly. Haven't quite decided on a day yet. We're both pretty busy, but we're going to work our hardest to make sure that we get an episode out every week. So I've appreciated those that have stuck around and listened to this episode, and look forward to talking to you guys again next week.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Super excited to get the next episode out soon. We will have information sent out about sending in questions for us as well, and we'll be sure to look over those and answer them in the next episode. Until then, everyone, enjoy your week. Go Hawks, go Kraken, go Sounders, go everyone. See you guys in the next one.